This is the UX Institute podcast, and I'm Mark Swain, founder of UXI. In this podcast, I interview UX and product leaders from around the globe.
How do you as a company differentiate your products? And if you think you can leave it up to a couple good prompts and a couple companies, that's fine, because I bet you anything the intention is to be just like everybody else, to get in the game and not be the player of the game.
Today, I'm very fortunate to speak with Gavin Lew, co-author of AI and UX. Gavin has over 25 years of experience in UX in both academic and corporate environments. Gavin can be seen presenting at conferences internationally and is currently managing partner of Bold Insight, a UX consulting practice working with clients globally. Gavin's book, AI and UX, Why AI Needs UX, pulls together an amazing array of conversation points on the critical role that UX plays in the creation of AI experiences. We delve into dataset formation, data context, AI frameworks, AI's usefulness, user trust factors, product creation, and what is easily replicated by AI today. Oh, as well as when experiences become weird. The UX researcher role is changing. We can feel it. We know we need to be self-educating and testing new generative AI tooling every week to support our work, right through to the latest ChatGPT vision modeler capabilities. As UX and product leaders, we need to embrace and spend the time needed to understand how generative AI can support our workflows and how AI can drive experiences users find useful. You can pick up Gavin's book on Amazon or O'Reilly. We will add some links in the show notes. Let's jump in. We're going to attempt to break down and talk about some areas with AI and UX today, an area that is exploding at the moment, something that we can't seem to, as designers, grab hold of and pull the reins in and understand and truly put to use, I guess. But we've kind of picked a few areas we're going to discuss today. One of the first topics that I wanted to jump into with you was around the current state role of UX and AI and what's happening at the moment with typical design practice, UX practice, research practice in tech companies, tech startups. How are designers feeling about improving their work that way? Do they even know where to start? I mean, the list of questions goes on. And I think a lot of designers are maybe a little scared to understand what to absorb first. They can't absorb the world of AI and what's happening to product creation at the moment, but taking little bites of the elephant off at a time to figure out what might apply to their work, what might be useful, and what's not.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Mark. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book. I co-wrote a book with Bob Schumacher called AI and UX. And it was about a 5-year project because it had its fits and starts. But the reality is, if you roll back the clock 7 years to when AI was starting to have another coming, where everyone was really pushing it. You know, you see the movement, a lot of it started years ago. In the book, it talks about even in the 50s and how it started. One of the things that you just mentioned is how people feel about AI because it's such a novel concept. It's intimidating. Really, the impetus for the book was how intimidating it could be. And I'll give you a quick personal story. So the design lab at UC San Diego, a school that I went to, I eventually gave a talk there. I was talking to Don Norman, and he goes, yeah, you know what? Why don't you give a talk at the design lab? So I'm talking to PhDs in computer sciences, machine learning, basically AI PhDs. And I'm giving this talk. I was very intimidated because they are so far beyond knowledge and brilliance compared to me. The first 20 minutes was really hard. At the end of it, they said, write the book. Because what I realized is that intimidation that I felt. Imagine a UX researcher, a designer, a marketing person, a product person looking at this. You now need a new product. It's going to have AI enabled. It's going to be powerful. Look at all the crazy it can do. The question marks. So one of the things that really challenged me was trying to understand what is it that we can do as UX designers, as UX researchers, as product managers to make AI better. And if you think of any product development process, the earlier we have UX insight, the better the product. We have to treat AI like any new technology. and not be intimidated by it. The example I have is in college. My old college roommate, he actually was one of the people that wrote one of the first neural networks for credit card fraud detection.
Okay.
So the year is 1990, 91. I'm in Europe. My credit card locks up. And I'm like, Craig did it. His algorithm totally did it. So I interviewed Craig later for the book, and he goes, what's really interesting is the underlying premise for the neural net is the same as it was 30 years ago. Faster processors, more data. I get all that. He said, but at the end of the day, when you were in Europe, it spit out a coefficient. Let's just say 0.8. Fraud. But fast forward to today. You're at a restaurant. Something weird happens according to the algorithm, and it spits out a coefficient of 0.8. But the experience now is you get a text and you can just say yes. The underlying coefficient is still the same from it was 30 years ago. But when you think of what is the user experience of that AI, it's radically different. And it's because we were able to start designing the potential outputs. What is the UX around the experience? And let's make it easier. I want to take some of the mystique out of AI because yes, it's got whiz bang. It's brilliant people are doing it, but let's assume they got it right. What are the next steps from a design perspective that we can design around now and not wait to see what AI turns up? Because that waiting period, we're losing time. Development cycles, iteration, good design principles. Had we known earlier that here's the coefficients, here's the threshold, which we can modify, but here's the threshold for fraud, what do we design a product around fraud? Yes, AI is most of the budget, most of the marketing, but what do we do as designers? So I wanted to make it more approachable.
So that one experience of fraud, what are the tentacles of that in terms of experience that AI can deliver to put the user on a rescue path, to get them out of trouble and get them back on track?
Exactly.
And so it's the utility of AI in the underlying layers that pushes that experience, right?
As all product development, as all really good design, yes. But we have to get in earlier.
Yeah, sure. So where I feel though, that's only come to life in the past. Like if we look at B2B SaaS from say 2017, 18, 19, 20, where we started to see more prompts, useful parts of experiences where we might have some quick modals, tool tips that are recommendations that are learning a little bit around what the user's doing. It's a little more personalized. The experience is improving ever so slightly that way. We went through a phase, I think, was it 28-19, where we talked about the black box that goes in underneath the platform, good data in, better data out, better experience out. But I've only really experienced small incremental user improvements of experience there. Nothing too drastic, nothing dramatic. When you look at leading B2B SaaS platforms, HubSpot, whatever it is, they all work and feel and look the same. Good prompts, good responses that the system is learning and pushing out. But it's not deep AI in any way, right?
It's not deep AI. It has that issue with, whether you think it's a Clippy type of assistant. Yeah. But, when you talk about the black box, there are 2 points to that. The first is what you brought up, incremental change. And one of the challenges, and you can think of it as Alexa. You've got this device that sits on your counter. Think of the first things you said. And it said, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. Will you ever ask again as a human? Would you ever waste your time asking that prompt again? But it evolves, but you may never know it. Think of how the Google search box has evolved, right? You could not enter things in the early days that you can now, but it is this black box that as a human, our experiences will beget the next experience and we learn from it. And that was some of the challenges with this concept of something that just let's MVP it. Let's get it out there and then let's incrementally improve. We're actually muddying the water because nobody wants to play in it because they go, it's not what I thought.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example where the MVP can harm the experience down the road. It can be early success, but do those early successes, can you last long enough in the marketplace to achieve the next level? Because unlike a child, I can't see an infant grow to crawl, to standing up to toddling to running and skipping. I can't see that with a black box.
Yeah.
And that's why designing the experience, giving us as users prompts, triggering behaviors, helping us learn to do something I failed before or haven't tried before. Those are human, distinctly humanized elements that AI and all of its power still needs a better design and a wrapper around it to get better engagement.
Has it become a little mooted now? Is it a little dead in terms of design practice? We all know what recommendations or usefulness out of a product looks like, that slim layer that we designed to over the past few years. We're now stepping into a whole new era.
We are stepping into a brand new era. And I call it the weirdness scale.
Okay.
If we do prediction and AI starts to predict things about you, it knows where you are, what time of day, a lot of your activities, your behavioral habits. It could make suggestions to you that could help. And it could say, hey, Mark, you're driving to this place. You might want to consult your grocery list. And maybe we can make a stop for you. Did you know that there's this kind of coupon? And give you prompts or triggers. But where is it on the scale of prediction that we as designers need to think about? Where does it become weird? When you're driving at 5 or 6 o'clock at night and it says, hey, would you like faster directions to that liquor store that you go to? I mean, where is the line? And that's where a lot of companies and designers are only doing the small incremental because they're scared of the unleashing it and letting it do what it wants, because there is a true weirdness line. Morally, where can you say things? What is proper? What's not? You've got companies like Google who its participants and users think Google knows everything. But we also know regulatory wise, they can't. There's a separation of information across different units, but we as users say, well, you're Google, you know everything. Maybe in my email, but maybe not over here, but we assume it. And that's the challenge. It's not even just a technology. It's the underlying human assumptions about what you should know about me that are actually maybe even incorrect. So that's why I'm saying we need to design an experience carefully earlier, because it's not just the technology. It's our past experiences and our own perceptions of what you should know about me already. You talk about error recovery. That's a design element that has nothing to do with the underlying AI. The AI will give an output with all these forks in the road. We as designers can design services and products to make those forks have error recovery, be frictionless, or are we going to just do that when it gets handed to us? Here's your use case. What if we were there earlier? Because if we'd known a few other pieces of information, we can make that experience more frictionless. So let me get back to the second point I had on your black box. This is where UX can really have an influence. And it might be too late in some companies, but not too late in others. And that is the learning algorithm, the data set itself. We have access. We know data. We have data. And a lot of companies are saying, you know what? Just throw it over to the data scientists, give it to AI, and let's see what comes up. Learn off of this because I have more data that I can consume. Let's not collect new data. Let's use the old stuff. So people are taking their data sets and giving it to data science that's cleaning it and then giving it to AI. And it's learning from it.
Sure.
We know a lot more about the data than the data set itself. And the example is, and one of the pillars that I believe we need to focus on is context. AI gets data, but we know the context around that data.
Mm-hmm.
An example is there's adverse event records in medical devices in the US. So if somebody has a problem with a medical device, they can report the problem and it comes up as a record.
Yeah.
Okay? And you could take that record, for example, and throw it into AI and see what magically comes up. But what we know as not just humans, but what we know about information is not being passed. So here's an example. Somebody who's taking Humira had an injection that it spilled all over the table. It didn't get their full dose. And then there's another record and millions of records to follow. But what we as UX people, we as product managers know is Humira is autoimmune. So let's add a column called autoimmune versus other forms. Well, there's another record that Enbrel is also autoimmune. Remicade is also autoimmune. What device? These are auto-injectors or prefilled syringe. Remicade is infused in a hospital. We have the date. What about day of week? What about seasons? What about time of day? It's there. But if we add columns of all of this insight as maybe it's not about autoimmune, or maybe it is. Maybe it's about the injection mechanism, the combination product. Maybe it's the auto injectors that tend to have a problem that AI makes a correlation to. It may not be the name, because all we're giving it is a name. All the extra columns, almost if we don't do that, gives a disservice to AI. Because we can triple the amount of data, but nobody's doing it because I don't understand what these AI people do. I have a data set. It's really big. Here you go. And that's my biggest challenge with this is we could have done things with that data from, I mentioned season, time of week, the class of drug, all these factors. Wouldn't that help differentiate and identify patterns if AI had more of that intelligence in the data set? And here's my problem. Will you ever go back and change the data set? Because once it learned, and maybe you're never going to, it may break what you learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so here's the other scary part. One of the books said, in the book, there's a section on imputation. And the concept is this. We run data all the time. We're researchers. We collect data. Human data. One of the head methodologists at Google scared me and said, I fear that 25% of the data that is supposed to be human generated are done by bots for money. And I said, okay, well, I get that. Let's hold that for a second. We don't do surveys the way we used to when they were in people's homes, to telephone banks, to computers, to mobile. They said, yeah, before we would sit down and have coffee and we go through this hour and a half long survey. Now it's pieces because no one's going to do an hour and a half on their phone. So it's by design has holes. It's like Swiss cheese. You do section A, B, and C and F. This person does A, C, and X. It's by design to have Swiss cheese. What do good data scientist people do? They impute the data. They fill it. So let me ask you those two things I brought up. If an algorithm by a bot is filling out data, and you have holes by design that are filled with by an algorithm, and all AI is a monster pattern recognition machine, is it actually picking up on human data? Or is it going to pick up algorithms by the bot and imputation? We have to think about this stuff as the people who understand the data. We may have collected it, that there are implications in the data set that was given that is now being the learning algorithm, and that the machine learning is learning off the data that we may not have given context to.
Sure. That's what I was coming to. The context layers are missing. The usefulness is missing. Yeah. I'm seeing it in other products as well being created at the moment. Like, for example, I've been involved in a medtech product where, as a designer in the background, I'm questioning the usefulness of AI here, both down to ethics, morals, in terms of making recommendations to patients for increase of dosage for heart conditions, fluid body. Lots of interesting slivers of automation can be brought in there through the tool, but should it really rest in the hands of recommendations back to patients?
But as a designer, it's not the technology. As a designer, it's what is the intention, the purpose for the product? Is the purpose to raise its hand and say, hey, Mark, I think that the patient might consider a different dose?
Yeah.
Are they raising their hand as a group, or are they one of the sole decision makers? What was the intention?
Yeah. So you see, with this kind of example, can we rely on the learning of the product to make that recommendation? Does the AI layer have enough context around that patient situation and peripheral conditions that might lead to so many layered variables of other outcomes if a dosage is increased, decreased on that particular day that they are consuming the dosage? It's deep. and it's dangerous?
Well, let me ask you this. It gave a recommendation, and the thought process that the team went through to make a decision and the consequential output or decision, did that ever get back into the AI algorithm? No, it's just giving ideas. But that data is probably even more valuable because of the patient condition. It could actually influence AI if there was a feedback loop where AI just wasn't raising its hand. It was part of a process, which gets us into going back to the data. It absorbs information. I love that. But how does it absorb the more new information? Like there's a new therapy. It is a game changer. Yet there are 100 studies with the old therapeutic, only 2 studies with the new. How AI doesn't weight it very well. I mean, maybe it's giving old data. To your point, it's giving an interesting recommendation from 1960 but look at now, the information you have, how does that get back in? So you as a user of this knowledge don't disregard it and say, yeah, that's old. The last 2 years, we've had incredible game-changing therapeutics. It's recommending the old stuff. Now you're less likely to use it because of these recurring experiences. But is there a feedback loop to build up? And the answer is it's because we're not designing that. We're so enamored by, well, what could AI tell us that we don't know? And I want it to be a team effort. What can AI start to tell us? What can we tell it back? And it can get smarter and we can get smarter and we rise up. But everyone's like, well, do you just tell me what to do? And then we'll talk about it after. It's this A to B. It's not a loop. And that's where you gets back to when you first said, well, incremental change. Do you care about that because it's going too slow for you?
Yeah, sure. That's how it did feel in the past. It was going too slow because people had these perceptions of the big bang whiz of AI. It was going to change flows, slim down journeys, automate steps, bring the user into just a one-screen experience, for example. How is that even possible? But we're not anywhere near that yet. And like you said, for the kind of med tech type app I just described, what I'm seeing is that it's small slivers at a time that are becoming useful.
And these might be the MVP. They're just trying to get it out there, get some traction. I get all that from a business standpoint, believe me.
Yeah.
But from a user standpoint, it's about engagement. It's about real success that you build on. Or if you kind of disregard it, it's just people are inherently efficient, which is another way that we're lazy. We're not going to say and do things that don't get a desired output. And we're just going to shift away. And it's going to create a world where it's really good for a couple things. And as it evolves, you may be unaware of it. And you're like, yeah, but I still don't trust it.
So let's swing it back. I like to give examples on the pod sometimes to help people think about themselves in this kind of scenario as a designer. If you're a UX leader, UX research lead, whatever it might be, you're building out new products. It's a typical B2B SaaS tool of some kind. You're sitting there. Everything is coming at you in your feed daily, pods everywhere about AI, and new AI tools are on the rise. Every day there's a new idea or tool launched around how to generate some of your work in some way that should be included or considered in your workflow. With that huge bombardment that's happening in the industry at the moment, along with fear, today, I mean, design, in my opinion, is pretty production line based today. When we look at apps or tools, we're all along the same flows and paradigms and screens and ideas. It's pretty simple to replicate, put it that way. Therefore, AI can replicate this stuff just as easily. Simple prompts. I've been playing around with lots of plugins in Figma and other tools like Midjourney and Dora. What is that situation for the designer today? How should they feel? How should they approach this? What should they adopt? And what noise should they block out?
Yeah, no, good question. How do we get the teams who handle the budget and the timelines to respect that there are design patterns that should be universal, replicatable, and easily created maybe through AI? But the higher level design, that's where design needs to elevate their game. there are always experiences that matter in a design. How do we focus more on there and leave the rest to maybe simplicity or repetition or automation? But there are areas where we almost need to spend our entire time on that piece. It's a dashboard. It's a matrix where people have to make decisions on these things. Those are the areas that I wouldn't want to trust the AI because of all the context, because of the interaction and trust. All of those pieces go into that one matrix or dashboard. When you click and go deep, you probably can do some of those things. It's that where I'm sitting in a research study and the designer looks at me and goes, "Hey, do you think that users might want this?" And he shows me a design. And I look at them and said, "You could actually do that? You have the data?" It's like, of course, I just didn't think anyone wanted it. That's something that AI can't divide. It can generate the rest. And that's why I think you mentioned the eye of the beholder. We have to have a better smell check on this as to where we're spending our time. Because let me take you to a different example. The generative AI about college essays as an example.
Yeah.
The typical 17 or 18-year-old thinks it's amazing that they can do something like this, right? And they think everything that it generated is amazing. And let me put the eye of the beholder test. It probably is pretty cool that it can generate along certain topics an essay. But picture the admissions person who has to read 1,000 of these and you don't edit it. How unique and novel do you actually think that essay is to the person who has to read 1,000 of them?
And that's deep context missing.
That's the context. It's the objective of what you're trying to do. And sometimes people are fascinated by the output, but they're missing what is the goal. The goal is to get into college. The goal is to have an amazing essay that's so unique, it will get you into college. If everyone asks that query, it's going to feel too similar and it will not do the objective. But I bet you anything, its output's kind of cool to the beholder, but not to somebody who actually is the arbiter of what's going to happen.
Visit uxinstitute.com to sign up to our new newsletter. UXI will be sharing best-in-class UX research practices as well as in-depth interview content so you can excel at your career in UX. That brings me back to the point that a designer in Figma or whatever else using a Figma plugin to spit out a bunch of dashboards, login screens, onboarding screens, whatever, they're getting a shell of an idea of similar foundation patterns, menus, whatever it might be. It's sped up their workflow by hours. So really, again, we're back to this point of it being a sliver of use of input into the workflow as opposed to taking over the workflow. The deeper context, like we said, the dashboards, those aha moments and particular features or screens, whatever it might be, that's where it truly lies deeply with the designer context-wise, as it always had, where AI right now can't really take that over or produce that level of depth of thinking around the feature or experience.
And I don't think it can without proper inputs. So we talk about the query. The query is only as good as the information you give it. The things you talked about, the subtle aspect of that design, if you as a designer didn't take the time to envision it and articulate it, it doesn't make it into your query that supposedly becomes magical. It gives you blah. It gives you vanilla. So we're seeing AI's efficiency as a shortcut, but it only helps if you do the upfront work to articulate your vision because you have much more access to the context. You know the interaction. And from the user perspective, you want to embody trust. How are you going to put that into a query unless you actually thought about the metaphor, the perspective, the interaction models? We want this to always look like this. We're going to build repetitive behaviors. We're going to make this intuitive rather than, it's most efficient because almost everybody who asks for this type of prompt looks at this and it's all piecemeal. It's not holding within your framework because maybe you haven't articulated it or envisioned it. And that's the hard labor. You're right. It shouldn't be moving pixels.
No. So See, this is interesting because I think this is where it's going. And of course, you can't escape a conversation like this without mentioning ChatGPT and whatever else, Midjourney. We are going to get to a point, though, that, hey, I'm going to pop in a few prompts and a tool is going to send me out a full SaaS platform with dashboards, everything done in terms of how I want it to work, what the key screens are. I've just saved 3 weeks of work. I just need to dicky these up a bit, make them a bit better, clean it up, fix a bit of, or, well, it will probably do the copy as well, right? Perhaps to a point. But I think that's where we're heading. You know, when we look at tools like Galileo that's coming and some of the plugins in Figma, this is where I think there's a bit of fear and worry for designers.
That reality is what people are spending money on. They're pushing for it because of the return on investment. If we could insert and plug and play something into the development process from a time perspective, a human cost perspective, I get it. And it's true. I mean, that just works for coding as it does in the motion picture industry, right? Or as well as the gaming area. That's even a larger chunk of the ROI.
Absolutely.
All of that is true. And I do think there could be some fear of the people who approach their job and they punch in and they just want to just code, make it work efficiently. But the reality is what they're building is pretty vanilla. But 1-2 levels higher, we still need to manage it. We still need the design. And those who think that, well, I'm one of 100 information architects that then provide it to the people who program all those pieces. If they are really worried about their job, we need to level up. We need to understand what is the intention. How do we map that better than just building screens? How do we take into consideration the interactions to make it intuitive? How do we build in the right context so we can do more than what's out there and what we've been told? And then obviously, how do we make it trust? Look at how ChatGPT right now is. It's novel. It's something that you can enter. Those who are finding workflows and building workflows as you described, that is a threat. I get it because it's also going to change the way people work. But ChatGPT right now is just a text box. And it's novel and cool. But think of the attrition curves right now. Those who are experimenting it, my wife is a freelance writer. She can do amazing things with it. But a lot of people just play with it, experiment, and then the attrition curves begin. How do we build real engagement with generative AI? I love that some people can create amazing generative images, passages, look things up, but now you're starting to see trust kick in. There's no references. We don't know if it's a hallucination. We don't know what's real. It's all based on what other people have asked, but more importantly, what it's consumed. So yes, doomsday scenarios are going to happen because most of the things that's consumed are doomsday scenarios. And it's just regurgitating what it's seen in the past. And to me, it's miraculous. It's amazing, but it's also incredibly vanilla because it's already been done in the past. The novel nature of our designs, that's where we separate and differentiate. How do you make your product successful? It does things that no one else does. It does it in a differentiated way. That I don't think can't be given to, I put in the best prompt and it's going to come up with something because you know what? It's going to look a lot like everything else. How do you as a company differentiate your products? And if you think you can leave it up to a couple good prompts and a couple companies, that's fine because I bet you anything the intention is to be just like everybody else, to get in the game and not be the player in the game. And that's differentiation versus third place and below.
That's a really good description. You've hit it really well there in that no matter what automation or speeding up of workflow comes along, that layer still sits on top of uniqueness, differentiation in experience, key moments, deeper personalization, simplification of journey screens,
Let's not get enamored by the cost savings and time savings, because ultimately building a product is not the goal. The goal is success in the marketplace. The goal is engagement, usage. Because if somebody uses a product every day, you're going to find better ways that you can help them. And guess what? That's enhancement 1 and beyond. You can evolve this if you have usage, if you have engagement, and if you want, and your goal isn't to launch and build. Your goal is to have a successful company in a marketplace. That uniqueness, that differentiation, it's not just associated with marketing. It's your product and how you work with it and engage with the product. Like, I'm a firm believer that ChatGPT is amazing as an engine, but it needs a better front end. It needs memory. It's better than, I hope it remembers, or I'm going to copy and paste. That is not an interface. It is just a product. Someone that starts putting front ends on top of this that is unique to my workflow, now you're giving me tools. And guess what? If I use it, I'm going to think of new things I want, and you're going to build me more tools. Which company is going to be successful? Yes, the engine itself, but the company that's building the front end of it, most companies are saying it's ChatGPT enabled. It is the engine behind the scenes. Why aren't they pitching, here's our product, here is the trust, the context, and the interaction that differentiates us, and that's why we have higher engagement. We don't have attrition. It goes back to, let's not be intimidated by it. Let's not be enamored by it. It is just technology. How do we use it to differentiate our products and win in the marketplace? And that's why I want to take the mystique off so that we can get in earlier and start designing it earlier with intention.
Yeah, it's nice. So if you were to visualize a product manager or a UX leader in a team again, they're a little bit nervous, they're a little bit anxious, what would be the 3 things you'd say to them to kind of hold on to their seat for the next 3 to 5 years?
Let's not be blind. Experiment with the technology. Understand it so that you could ask deeper questions as to what it can and cannot do. Protect yourself with knowledge and intelligence, but then ask yourself, what are the friction points? What is the interaction that could have been better? What is the context that seems to be missing? The gap that you may be seeing is that AI isn't as smart as it thinks it is. It should have more of these contexts. Maybe now you're the one suggesting that we add context to the model. And then as you've done this a few times, the new dimension of trust is going to come in. What would you trust? Your job, your activities, your day-to-day, whether mundane or not, what would you trust this to do? And why not? Now you have even more gaps. So the book is about context, interaction, and trust. And I fall back hard on that, saying these kind of are fundamental. Somebody who's worried can do a little experimenting and playing. And if here's a framework you use, and over time, you're going to say to yourself, you know what? I would use that. I would not trust that one. And then ask yourself why and articulate it. Because if you can articulate it, you can train people. You can tell people. Next thing you know, you are a leader and a manager because you can articulate the gaps and deficiencies so that you could be the solver and solution for it. And now your team is in a position to solve and be the solution. And now people who are so worried about their jobs are not reactionary, but they're proactive. And now this team could be the ones to make it better.
Nice. Good points. I couldn't just support that enough in terms of trying to push designers to really experiment with the likes of ChatGPT, Midjourney, whatever else out there.
You want to know what it can do. And you want to challenge the AI side of it and say, I wish it could have done that. They may then reveal to you their internal challenges. And guess what? The mystique is gone. And now guess what? You're interacting with who? The amazing and brilliant AI people, because they see their own challenges and deficits and they want you to help. And I bet you anything, your context can help. And if your interactions produce this data, that can feed back in. And all of a sudden, you aren't waiting for them to hand you what AI needs to do with the product. You're actually a team. And now we're a design team. And now I think we have a better chance of being differentiated in the market because the AI people don't have all the answers and you don't have all the answers, but together you're going to knock out some of those questions and gaps.
And realities.
Totally. And isn't that the world we want to play in? I mean, now you're suddenly not just somebody who's worried about their job. You're like, well, I know a lot more about AI than I ever did. And I'm helping them and they're helping me. That to me is design.
It's all soft skills when it comes down to the foundation completely. It's also getting harder in such a Me Too marketplace for most product verticals.
Isn't it?
Well, maybe that's me showing my experience and age in design from using so many products and testing and benchmarking so many products in so many areas that everything just feels the same.
And in 5 years, how many of those products are going to be around?
Correct.
That's the fear.
But this spurs on the question that in 5, 7, 8 years' time, what does that UX, UI layer look like on top of products from where we are today?
We don't have that piece you're talking about. I look forward to it because it's going to have a lot of experimentation. It's going to have failures, but it's also going to have amazing success. And suddenly we can harness AI to not see what happens, but to actually use it as an engine because we're giving it a context.
Exactly.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, completely. I've so many thoughts around what that future state looks like. It's like websites are gone. They're not really used anymore, maybe. SaaS tools are gone. Maybe chat interfaces will have a bigger moment, then fade off again. I'm kind of gone past all of that. I'm kind of looking, what is that daily interaction group that I interact with? It doesn't feel like those kind of products anymore.
I'll challenge you, Mark.
Yeah.
How is this different from the concept in the 70s, 80s, and 90s of the invisible computer? How is all the things you described fading into the background? Because they may not exist because I no longer interact with them on a daily basis, but the purpose may still exist, but it may now be invisible to me because to go from A to B, I used to take 7 steps. All those steps become invisible. And now it's only A to B. I still think there's a role for it. How is this changed? Look at the way you used to make payments and all those processes. There still exists the underlying mechanisms to pay somebody money. But the A to B, which used to be A to X, is now just A to B. It's just behind the scenes. It's still got to get built.
I see it whereby we reach a state where we have an automatic co-pilot on our behalf working for us in the background, where so much is learned from an input perspective that the experience is so deeply personalized and simplified that it becomes invisible. It just is. It just is part of our workflows. It comes in at the right time. It does the right things. It goes back out again the way we want.
Okay, so what you described, my only thought here is I don't think it's going to magically occur from AI. It's going to have a really good design. It's going to be iterative. We're going to figure out what is the best input to get us there. What's a waste of time? There's going to be a lot of cycles to get to that end state you described, but the answer is not going to be AI made it up. No level of sentient will do that. It's still trial and error. It goes back to design. It goes back to failing fast. It goes back to iteration. That's the world we should embrace because there's more than enough work there, because the world you designed is the future. And it's not going to happen because AI thought it. It's going to happen because AI is enabling it, but we designed it.
Sure. That layer still will always be there for designers, no matter what.
I hope so.
So therefore, there's obviously a deep need for designers who are progressing their career to just constantly self-educate and propel.
And those are the leaders.
Yep. That's it.
And I can't help but feel sad for those who just like to code and put their head down. But that world may be changing and there's threats, but there's a path if you're just curious. AI is not something that you cannot interact with and have a position today. Experiment, get a position, know where you like it, where you don't like it, turn those words into gaps, things that are efficient, make your life a little more efficient. Let's take that veil off. Let's just throw it off because everything we've talked about gets into a deeper association between design and the technology.
It does. And this conversation has been awesome. I know we were only hitting off things at such a high level here. It would be great to get you back on again to dive deeper into specific areas, particularly from the book. I just want to say a big thank you for jumping on. Your time, your input is phenomenal, amazing. It's going to give designers a huge amount to think about out there that are listening into this pod regularly. And hopefully they can take away something to their workflow.
No, this has been fun. I hope to get feedback because my gaps, I haven't coded in decades. I would love to see how it's evolved and where they see gaps because that's where we can make the connection points into what AI can and cannot do, how it can get better, and how we can carve a world that's uniquely human.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Gavin. See you again.
Thank you. This is fun.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I have. It is important that we continue to discuss the rapidly changing role of the UX researcher through one of the most profound technical advancements of our time. And remember, you can find links to Gavin's book in the episode show notes below. Thank you for listening to the official UX Institute podcast. We are so grateful you are listening to our content, and we will continue to bring you great guests and topics in UX research, product design, and product strategy. Till next time, bye for now.